Opinions of the individuals during this broadcast are their own and may not be the opinions of their group or other organizations they may be involved with. All medical advice during our broadcast is not a medical opinion and should be checked with your medical physician. This show is a rebroadcast of the Green Crush podcast with Alan Park. Heard on 420radio.ca and seen on cbgtv.com.
Hello and welcome to Green Crush, again for the second time today, and we were late the first time. And
to break the law.
That's what we're here for. That is what we're here for. More specifically, to change the laws before they get put together. Folks, they're coming up with a bunch of laws in Canada. They've already come up with them. And they were originally presented to us as a proposal. And unlike any actual proposal in truth where there are options to reply, there's no option here. They're just going to steamroll right through with a series of regulations that are meant to placate police officers and police chiefs, of which we met several last weekend when we were at the LIFT conference a couple of weekends ago in Ottawa, while we were right next door to them in the convention center. And of course, when I say we, I mean LIFT, the Cannabis Expo, where we're finding out about the ways of the future rather than the ways of the past, from the men in blue all dressed up in their nice suits and tuxedos, partying beside us, depriving Ottawa, the nation's capital, of copious amounts of alcohol, I'm sure, to burn those grooves in the brain where they think they're sitting at the top of society's chosen ones for their opinions. And they're so wrong, they just don't know it yet. I got a lot of listeners that are telling me the same thing. So welcome to the show. Late start, maybe I'll get into why that is, maybe I won't, but it's live stuff. I basically forgot everything that I had ready to bring here in a bag. Left it at the door. I had some other things to do before the show, and I left the everything I needed at home. And so I had to go back and come back. So thanks for waiting. I broke time and sound and speed barriers doing it. And I think it's because I'm in a really bad mood overall with what's going on in Canada. So welcome to the listeners of the world to Green Crush. What is Green Crush if you're just listening to us for the first time? And I think there may be several new listeners this week according to information that I've received after appearing on a very wonderful program with a great host on Coast to Coast last well, it was Saturday, November 4th, but by the time I got on the air, it had crossed into Sunday, November 5th, Saturday night kind of thing. And I got to speak with the host, Richard Serrett, on Coast to Coast. 3 million listeners hearing the same thing and lots of the same kinds of things you've been hearing on Green Crush. And told him my story, told him how I was so sick with stage 4 irreversible cancer that no surgery, no chemotherapy, no radiation was going to take care of. I was told to make my plans and go home a few years ago. We're actually coming up on the anniversary of my diagnosis, the 20th of November, 2013, when they told me I wouldn't be doing a show 3 years from that point. They didn't give me that option. 4 years from that point now. They didn't give me that option. So I had to create one. If I can tell anything to anybody who says, you should be listening to your doctor, this is irresponsible. Well, my doctor sent me away. So it's very responsible. It's extremely responsible to take responsibility for your own health away from a behemoth that sometimes doesn't always find a way to take care of you like you ought to be. And so when you don't get to go through those first 3 doors, you have to you have to find another one or decide that everybody is telling you the truth that doesn't seem to have the information that you need to continue. And unfortunately for the people that sentenced me to my end, and I don't mean that in a mean way, they just said, we don't have anything. There's nothing left for you to do. Because I'm an expert in my field and I haven't bothered to look at other data, which is widely available, and I don't really want to look at that data, which is really widely available, so you just go home and die now. Why is it that you can be an expert in prostate cancer in 2013 in one of the biggest, most successful, most world-renowned hospitals, Mount Sinai, in Toronto, on University Avenue, and you kind of look a little bit like, what's his name on Lewis Black, a little bit younger than Lewis Black. How can you be at the top of your game, sir, sitting in one of the biggest hospitals, and in 2013, at around this time, tell someone there's nothing that can be done when you haven't done your fucking homework? You didn't look at cancerresearchuk.org and their article. Now, if I'm at the top of my game doing something, I'm not at the top of my game podcasting. I'm not at the top of my game in comedy. I'm not at the top of my game in being a fantastic man. I'm just doing my best. But I know the guys that are doing well, and I have examples to look to, and I don't consider myself an expert on anything. So when you consider yourself to be an expert and you give someone the prognosis that they can just get into the ground and die now, you better fucking know what you're talking about. Turns out cannabis chemicals stop prostate cancer growth, says Cancer Research UK. Now, don't give me any kind of crap about how you're a Canadian doctor and you didn't know about the British thing. That's what I said. You know about other people doing things in your field. If you're a snowboarder, for example, and you live in Canada, you know who the other snowboarders are. You've been with them before, even if they do live and work in other countries. Right? Right, Ross Rebagliati? We have Ross Rebagliati on the show today, folks. This guy is a gold medal winner. He won a gold medal in snowboarding the year that snowboarding was introduced. I was going to say allowed. Introduced, not allowed, into the Olympics. And Ross won, Canadian guy, fantastic, did a great job. You can look that up on YouTube. First time ever, Canadian guy, gold medalist. What happens? The IOC decides he's got cannabis in his system and they take his medal away from him, or they get into the mode of taking his medal away from him. Cannabis wasn't even on the list of banned substances. Isn't that interesting? We'll ask Ross about that. Was it just some inflated sense of moralism? My God, we can't have a guy on weed winning a gold medal. What will happen? We in the government and we in the establishment and we in the medical institutions and we in the mental health society have deemed that cannabis is no value. Doesn't bring anything to the world. Everything that's been done that's any good is in a cannabis-free state, they say. Which is hilarious if you have ever read a book or listened to some music. You might come to a different conclusion. So Ross is going to be coming along shortly. He has parlayed his involvement with cannabis that wasn't really his choice in the first place, which sounds very similar to me, although much more fun and less dire. But he's been able to turn that thing into a living, and he's got some great products. He is a burgeoning pioneer, not only in snowboarding and winning a gold medal. This guy's got pioneer running through his blood. He's building a very successful company out in Kelowna, British Columbia, and I'm happy to speak with him shortly. But let's get back to this article about cannabis chemicals stop prostate cancer growth. Active chemicals in cannabis shown to halt prostate cancer cell growth. According to some internet troll? No, the British Journal of Cancer. Researchers at University of Alcalá in Madrid tested the effects of active chemicals in cannabis called cannabinoids on prostate cancer cell lines. We won't get too technical, but PC3, DUA45, and LNCAP, maybe I'm the AP in that, says that the prostate cancer cells carry molecular garages. This is their word, it's in quotes, and they are receptors in which cannabinoids can park. This, of course, is the early talk of the CB1 and the CB2 receptors, which are designed to receive cannabis. And you punks with snot on your ties are telling the rest of us we can't have it. You guys are on the wrong side of history. That wouldn't be so bad if it wasn't criminal. And as we move along into a labyrinthine construct of bullshit rules that are designed to fatten particular corporations, but not others, I want you folks to understand this is very real stuff, and people are coming together. People are talking to me about this. We are putting together what is called a counter to the proposal. So if you're a person that thinks, oh, well, at least they're legalizing it, that'll be okay, you're wrong. I'm sorry, you don't really know. You haven't really studied the topography here of what's going on. For example, one of the towns, one of the many, many, many towns in Ontario. This is a large province if you're not from Canada. It's quite huge. A lot of people live here. Many, many people. I would say the majority of Canadians live in Ontario. And after they legalize, they say they'll have 40 stores here. Isn't that exciting? But Cornwall's not one of them. There are some. Brantford's not one of them. And so now we go to this particular story in the Kingston Whig. Kingston, of course, being the hometown, the original capital city of Canada. Maybe that has something to do with why they're getting anything out of this. But let's go to that now. This is Kingston, Ontario, is so going to be getting, as they say in the less than reputable thewig.com, that's WHIG, marijuana stores likely mean more union jobs. So as soon as you're saying a marijuana store, once we've gotten to the point where we realize marijuana is a demonization word deliberately placed upon the healthful property of cannabis to take it out of circulation. Thank you so much, Richard Nixon, former president. Rest your soul. I won't say in peace. I hope it still hurts a little bit. What's going on here is that in Kingston, the unions are excited that local LCBO employees who belong to OPSEU, that's a union here, are excited and anxious for Kingston to get its own government-run marijuana store. I don't think I've seen a more nausea-inducing phrase than government-run marijuana store. But Teresa Graham, president of OPSEU Local 49, is thrilled that they're having one coming to Kingston. So if you're in Nipissing or if you're in Cornwall, if you're in any kind of place, get on a Greyhound bus, spend several hours of your life, go into a store in Kingston, buy yourself a couple of, but not more than 30 ounces, not more than 30 grams, rather 1 ounce, or you're going to jail for 14 years maybe. And then get back on the bus and go to Cornwall and lock yourself up in your house. And if you have kids in there, that's okay. Smoke it anyway because they want to make sure kids are safe. So you have to smoke it at home where your kids are supposed to be. And other ridiculous, nonsensical applications of a not very well thought out law, which in fact is very well thought out, very deliberately leading us away from any kind of sensible input. I really don't understand why. I understand why they're doing it. I just don't understand why they're getting away with it. Welcome to the show. We are Green Crush. The green is cannabis. The crush is the cancer that I had and lots of other diseases, autoimmune diseases, all kinds of things. Headaches, resting. There's a lot of naysayers out there. And it's funny watching them cling onto a little piece of flotsam bobbing around in their little self-constructed pool of lies, hoping not to drown with the facts that are coming over the top. And I'm not going to stop till this new law goes down because I want to change it. I would like to change this law personally. So if you want to join me, send an email to alancomic1@gmail.com or greencrush@gmail.com. Reach us at Green Crush Pod, and we are broadcasting live from the fantastic 234 King Street East, the Pacific Junction Hotel. And going to move along to a couple of more items before we get to our guest, who is soon waiting on the line. Thank you so much. Ross is there with us. Good news is, if you're a governmentarian, Government of Canada is holding a symposium on cannabis public education this Friday, November 10th in Ottawa. I'll say that again, Government of Canada holding a symposium. I'm sure I'll be able to attend. I won't be able to attend. The Partnership Symposium on Cannabis Public Education and Awareness. Oh, good. I do have some awareness to bring to the game. It's going to bring together about 90 representatives from stakeholders across Canada. Well, I'm a stakeholder in my own health, and I can promise you folks, if you try to continue blocking any access whatsoever, free and available access, just as I can go outside right now to the doggy park and pick a clump of grass off of the ground, as long as I'm careful to avoid the poop, I can pick that and take it home if I want. Of course, that's not going to do me any good. But the cannabis is exactly the same, and I'll be doing it. It says here, the Government of Canada will be holding a symposium on Friday on public education and awareness. Public education and awareness. Are they going to be teaching the children that the marijuana business right now on the stock exchange, and if our friend in England, Edward Fitzgerald, is listening, has a marijuana SX exchange happening? I wonder if they're going to teach kids how to actually invest in this terrible thing so that they can make money in it later. Or is that just all going to stay with a lot of folks who have put a lot of folks in jail for the same reason? Former Premier of Ontario, a Conservative, and the Finance Minister at one point under another Conservative, Ernie Eves, is the point man, making a lot of money right now with a medical cannabis company in Kingston, Jamaica. And he's profiting from this, and under his watch, lots of folks went to jail for the same thing. So that's not really reasonable or fair at all. So they're going to be talking about Indigenous peoples and pregnant and breastfeeding women and all those kinds of things, and Canadians with a history of mental illness, and they're going to be telling us all of the bad things, and that's good. But not when it's in a vacuum of deciding to omit the good things. Meanwhile, here in Toronto, bars are going to be open until 4 a.m. this week. I just thought that might land somewhere that some people might think that that's pretty ridiculous. I do. And if you don't, then I guess I'm in my own little world. But that's the way I see things, and that's the way I needed to see things to get out of, I guess, real-life purgatory. I don't know. But you tell me, Toronto bars are open until 4 a.m. this week, and here's why. They're going to extend last call in the coming days thanks to Indie Week, which takes over the city from November 7 to 12. The majority of spots until 4 a.m. are live music venues, but there's a few options beyond that scope as well. We're going to have a 4 a.m. bar tab here, folks. 4 a.m. And while I'm not saying we should shut that down, I'm questioning the logic of opening every single purveyor of alcohol in the city an extra 2 hours to make a lot of money, while at the same time, in that very same week, they're having a symposium on cannabis, marijuana, to tell us how dangerous it is. You would think at that point that perhaps the Prime Minister and some other folks of his might be telling some lies or obfuscating the truth, one or the other. And you'd be right. History shows us that they don't really want us to have this particular access. You know what education is sometimes? It's actually indoctrination. And before you go to a government education on anything, look up the word indoctrination and bloody well know the difference between the two. Because a government of total control, have we ever heard of that before? Kathleen Wynne, reprehensible being. The term totalitarianism, this is from a cool website I found called History with Mr. Green. The term totalitarianism describes a government that takes total, centralized state control over every aspect of public and private life. Totalitarian leaders appear to provide a sense of security, Justin, and to give a direction for the future, Bill Blair. And this new cannabis construct. See how it just fits in? No problem. In the 20th century, the widespread use of mass communication made it possible to reach into all aspects of citizens' lives. A dynamic leader, oh, look at his hair, he's so cute, who can build support for his policies. Everyone thought they were just going to legalize pot as soon as he got in. And justify his actions, well, he just repeats a different answer to the same question over and over again to avoid that, and then pops his earpiece back into his head. Every time he does it, you can see why some guys might want to crowd at him in the schoolyard. Often the leader utilizes secret police to crush opposition in the markets with the dispensaries and everywhere else, and to create a sense of fear among the people. Oh, I don't want to get arrested and do 14 years. No one is exempt from suspicion or accusations that he or she is an enemy of the state. Well, if you keep doing this kind of shit and keep on excluding the input of people who have fucking died and then come back with this particular substance, you're going to have some kind of blowback. It's going to be a fun winter and spring, you guys. People just don't know enough right now. They've been too busy working together to get 3 jobs so they could pay for everything in this ridiculously cranked up, designed to spiral economy. Where I'm sounding like my grandfather. When I was a kid, I used to hear, oh, when I was a pound of butter was a nickel. And now I'm saying it was $2 and it's now 9 or 10. So this dynamic leader with the nice hair, where no one is exempt from suspicion or accusations that he or she is the enemy of the state, I'm going to be pretty comfortable putting myself in that category. Totalitarianism challenges the highest values prized by Western democracies: reason, freedom, supposedly, human dignity, and the worth of the individual. As the chart on the next page shows, which we won't be getting into now, all totalitarian states share basic characteristics. To dominate an entire nation, totalitarian leaders devised methods of control. What does Kathleen Wynne say about cannabis distribution in this province? Control. The Liquor Control Board. Whereas I can have a still in my basement if I choose. The Cannabis Control Board. You're never going to control it. We're going to work hard to blow away this illusion that you have. You can't possibly implement a gigantic system of punitive laws, Kathleen Wynne, the whole time resembling Orville Redenbacher. It's just not credible on its face. So here are these included uses are terror, indoctrination, propaganda, censorship, and religious or ethnic persecution. So we just had all of that this week. We've had the use of terror, the jacking up of these punishments, supposedly for using a free plan. Indoctrination, which is really what they're going to be doing when they say that they're educating people. Propaganda, which is telling everyone how terrible it is, and the health concerns, which are legitimate, but you also have to look at the health positives. And I wouldn't be able to do that from a box in the ground, would I? Censorship, which is why my former employer, CBC, doesn't want to have anything to do with me. They won't talk to me. Hey, what if it's all bullshit? How about you say, hey, this former comedian that was on a coast-to-coast show, not the one that I did on the weekend, but a TV show for 10 or 11, 12 years. I'm relatively well known in this particular country for being on this show. And they won't talk to me. I think they should come at it from the angle of former comedian on one of the most successful shows we've ever had says he got stage 4 cancer, says he used cannabis. Let's talk to this clown and see what he's all about. You know, like paint me the fool, why don't you, CBC? They won't even go there because they know they can't win. It comes down to no one can really win the argument of whether or not I actually died in 2014 or not other than me. So here are the first few things that we're going to find out. The first few several things. I'm going to give us a little bit of a more upbeat tone for this, you know, because it's so terrible. Maybe that'll be a nice juxtaposition to those folks listening elsewhere. So the included use of terror, indoctrination, propaganda, censorship, and religious or ethnic persecution, which our new Governor General just did. She put down every single person of faith in this country. Now, I don't have all of the faiths, but I realize everybody's able to have faith, and if you have faith, you are a Canadian. And how the Governor General of Canada, the new one, Julie Payette, can actually tell us that all of that stuff is BS, and how can anybody believe in that stuff? I would say, well, what do you expect me to do when I go to court and put my hand on the Bible? Make an exemption? Julie? Nice debut there. Telling the natives they don't know what's up spiritually. Well done. Well done. You puppet. Julie Payette as the Governor General of Canada. If you don't know what the Governor General of any country is, or the Lieutenant Governor of any province, this is the person who represents the Queen of England. There's no reason to shine any pride on that. The Governor General represents the Queen of England. So basically, the Governor General is like a prosthetic arm on a corpse. Not of much value. Liz is going to slide off soon. We don't need her anymore. She's a figurehead. And she's an expensive one, and she's a damaging one, and she's caused a lot of problems. And hey, all you Trudeau lovers out there that couldn't wait for him to get sworn in. Now, I admit, it was great to see Harper sworn out. But when you saw Justin getting sworn in, be honest and tell me the truth, and tell yourself the truth, even more importantly, and say this. When you saw Trudeau getting sworn in his cabinet, and you know you're out there, how many of you said to yourself, wait a second, how come he's swearing allegiance to the Queen instead of the geographical representation of voters that he went around and canvassed and hoped to get the vote for? The scam is this. You live in a neighborhood, you're from a neighborhood, and sometimes they'll fly in if they need someone there. And you live in that neighborhood and you represent that neighborhood, and then you go around and you try to get everybody's vote and you say, I'll fight for you. And that's what you do. You walk around the neighborhood, you tell everybody who you're for, what you're doing. And then when you get the gig, you swear allegiance to the Queen? You folks aren't paying attention. So many people were surprised at that. I guess they weren't in grade 6 civics class when they found that out. But here's how they implement all of this terror, indoctrination. First point on this website, History with Mr. Green, is police terror. Dictators of totalitarian states use terror and violence to force obedience and to crush opposition. Normally, the police are expected to respond to criminal activity and protect the citizens, but in a totalitarian state, the police serve to enforce the central government's policies. And if you lost your job and your income and you got a police record for carrying around cannabis, or you worked in a dispensary recently, you're at the top of this list. They may do this by spying on the citizens or by intimidating them. Sometimes they use brutal force and even murder to achieve their goals. And if you think that's not true, you're probably still reading newspapers instead of digital media. Then there's indoctrination, where they rely on indoctrination, the instruction in the government's beliefs to mold people's minds. And that's exactly what your mind is doing right now. Stop thinking, it's going to be legalized soon. That's not a thing. Decriminalizing, that would be something. You can't add 50 new laws or whatever it is with heavy-duty penalties and tell me it's all legalized. Well, it is legalized. It's just not decriminalized. It's not free access while you're trying to convince people that it is because you're allowed to smoke at home and you didn't used to be. So, Justin, what I'd like to say to you is that I know you don't listen to this, or maybe your people do. I hope some of your people do. Some of them are balls deep into investing into the cannabis industry. Isn't that funny? Isn't that amazing, Justin, that while your tax minister, your finance minister, same thing, has put out a series of punitive new tax laws that a lot of people are getting upset about small business-wise to choke it out. Bill Morneau, finance minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau, prime minister of Canada, the Queen of Bloody England, finance minister of Canada, have all been tapped in the Paradise Papers. These guys are squirreling away everything they've got pretty much far away, while they tell us that we have to do things like pay for the rest of it ourselves, while they shuffle and hide their money into offshore accounts. This is the finance minister of Canada. Paradise Papers. Check it out. Oh my goodness. You're not getting away with it. Can't possibly be done. So Bill Morneau, who's been tucking his money away just like Trump and company, the Queen of England, who says she doesn't know she had companies that victimize the poor. She didn't know. Queen didn't realize it. I guess she hasn't had enough time on the fucking job to figure out how it works. What is she, 90? Get out of here. So that's our little lesson on totalitarianism. It's on the way. It's happening. There's been a proposal put forward. So you know it's true. So again, if you're listening because you came here from coast to coast, thanks for joining us. I had a great time with the host Richard Serrett on that show, guesting in for George Noory, and I am still inundated with a lot of positive feedback, but one raft of letters. I don't even want to tell you how many I got. I spent most of the time since trying to get through them, and I'm trying to point some healthful alternatives to a lot of people that were quite happy to hear about this. And the stories were heavy duty. Put me in a position of, I'm not a doctor, but I will listen to what's going on with you. And I can usually recommend what I would do in that situation. And this keeps me out of the trouble of actually prescribing anything. So while I know that cannabis chemicals stop prostate cancer growth, and while I know what I've been through, and while I know that 16 years ago, the British government and the research there already declared it beyond anecdotal, the success of cannabis, it's still taking people. And to this, I say a very good, wonderful person, once again, was taken from our midst, very shockingly recently, to myself and several of my schoolmates. We were on a little thing called Radio Monarch at Monarch Park High School in Toronto way back in the 70s. And one of us has succumbed to the big C. And I'm sorry that I'm not going to mention her name on the air. But you have been in my thoughts. And I'm sorry we didn't get to talk too soon once you were taken with this disease. So rest in peace to my good friend and compatriot and wonderful soul. We keep losing wonderful souls, and we keep having scumbags setting policy for the rest of the wonderful souls. Isn't that amazing? So this is where we would have a commercial break, and I would probably put a Kleenex in my eyes, but we don't have any Kleenex, and we don't have any commercials, not yet anyway. This is all free shit. And this is some good stuff here. We got a fly in the studio. That's perfect. I just said the word shit and the fly comes. All right, so we are going to move on with, I'm very excited to bring our guest onto the show today, Mr. Ross Rebagliati. Are you there? Do we have Ross on the line?
I'm here.
Hey, Ross, how are you?
How are you guys?
I'm good. So Ross is calling us from Kelowna on Skype, and let's tell the folks a little bit who might be younger than you and I, Ross, exactly why you are who you are. You're a snowboarder extraordinaire a long time ago, and you were the first one. You were in the first wave of snowboarders into the Olympics, isn't that right?
Yeah, correct. Well, more or less. There were some guys that came before me that, might have been there, but yeah, I was the first wave that made it to the Olympics that snowboarding was indoctrinated into.
And how did you decide, like, you were a little kid, I guess 10, 15 years old, snowboarding, getting pretty good?
Yeah, I mean, that's when I started snowboarding, and then, by the time I was in Nagano, I was 26. But yeah, I started off when I was 15. Snowboarding wasn't allowed in Canada yet. It was 1987, and I had been ski racing for the last for 7 years leading up to that point, when I discovered snowboarding through some friends who had been to the States, and so I ended up getting one. And over the first year we went down to Washington to ride at Mount Baker, where we were allowed to snowboard, and then the next year, here and there, some resorts started opening up in Canada, like Silver Star and Cypress Bowl, Whistler, And so,
Beautiful
yeah,
skiing
and
up
then I was
there.
just off to the races. Oh, unreal.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
great spot in the world. So, where were you? Like, how did you get to be in a place where you went, oh, I can do this in the Olympics? Like, you're in the first category. I mean, if you knew about pole vaulting or something, you could have known about that a long time ago. But how did you just decide, I'm good enough to get in the Olympics and then be in the first wave?
Yeah, well, so from 88 to around 90, I was on the amateur tour here in British Columbia, just touring around as a teenager in high school on the weekends, doing contests. I was good. I was winning contests, freestyle stuff mostly. And, we didn't really have like the equipment for both. You just raced on
Sure.
your snowboard. It didn't make a difference. So I transitioned from that after high school, and I made it into the snowboard magazines during the 80s and early 90s. And I parlayed that into an opportunity to join a pro team down in, based in Oregon, which I did. And, that got me onto the World Cup tour in Europe later on that same year. And then I spent a good 7 or 8 years on the World Cup tour. Where I was also successful. Not at first. My first year, I wasn't the most successful, but
Falling down
by
a
the
lot?
time I was in the second season of the World Cup, I was making the podium. And, by my third season on World Cup, I was winning races. So as it turned out, leading up to Nagano, from probably about 95, 96, 97, or maybe it was 1 year earlier, I was ranked in the top 3 in the world for 3 years in a row. And
3 for 3.
so we knew in 94 that we were going to be competing in Nagano in 98. So we had 4 years of buildup. I was
Okay.
at the top of my game, ranked number 1 in the world when we knew it, that we were going to Nagano. So I kind of knew. I just knew. I didn't, I still had to do a bunch of qualification races leading up, like right before Nagano. And, to make just a quick story, I actually didn't get selected for the team briefly.
Oh, no.
And then I had to argue my way onto it.
Now, don't tell me you were
And,
caught smoking a joint.
no, it was just ridiculous. Like I ended up, the criteria was for the Canadian national team was past results plus how you did in the Canadian qualification races.
Okay.
So I did 2 of those qualification races. I was second out of the Canadians. We had a stacked team, by the way. Mark Fawcett, JCJ Anderson, also world-class athletes on the team. And so I was happy to get second place. Those guys also had huge, creds to their
Who doesn't?
so I got in, and then the rest is history.
The rest is
basically.
history. So let's just refresh people's memories. I know there are a lot of younger folks listening to the show that might not, I remember it vividly, but you take us through a little bit. So you're in the Olympics, or you're at the Olympics, or slightly before the Olympics. You're tested, right? And then
Yeah. So basically, I did my race, and
which you won, which
I
was
won.
great.
I won the race, and we did a little podium ceremony, preliminary, right in the finish line, and then we were ushered into the army tent to do the drug test, where we did it and carried on. We went to the official award ceremonies, and then we basically partied all night long. By the morning time, we were still partying, or we woke up and started partying
Yeah.
again because we were done after 4 years of a build-up.
Sure.
And coach came in. He said, "Everybody out except for you, Ross. Sit down." And I just fucking got the cold sweats, and I knew I was in trouble because all my life I've always been in trouble for something.
Yeah.
And they told me that I tested positive for something. They didn't know what it was, and I
So
kind of knew. I told them that I knew what it was, but I didn't. I wasn't using it. But the only thing I could have been was weed, because that's the only thing that I'm exposed to that potentially might be against the rules.
But it wasn't cannabis or marijuana or whatever they wanted to call it. It wasn't on the list of banned substances, isn't that right?
Correct, but we didn't know that. We thought it was.
Oh, you thought it was. So you're
we
even
literally
aware that it
thought
might
it was.
be. Oh, you think it might
Yeah,
be.
well, I
Oh.
stopped smoking. I was pretty much stopped smoking for a couple of years already, but we were, at the end of the season, we felt like there was some time. So anyway, in April of 97, that's when I, I made a mental note to myself that in April I would stop smoking and make sure that I passed my test for Nagano.
Right.
And that's what I did. But the reality was that I was still immersed in the cannabis culture for all of those months. And I was racing, I was on tour, I wasn't using, but when I was back home in Whistler, I was just with my buddies, with my bros. And I had a couple of guys pass away in avalanches and
Wow.
around that time too. And we had there was some wakes and whatnot. But
Yeah.
I mean, that's what it was attributed to. But to be honest, I mean, I was just in the cannabis culture every day. I wasn't using it myself. I thought
Yeah.
that was good enough. But as it turned out, I still tested positive for it.
So it turns out that you can be as irresponsible as the government says and use cannabis and not only be able to contribute to society, which goes against what they say. And I think this is part of the reason they don't like it is because the more and more people use it openly and just talk about it, who actually achieve things, it sort of it completely undermines the perception that there is no value to this particular substance. Ask Michael Phelps. I mean, they hate the fact that, what is this guy, like, got 15 gold medals or something? And he's an avowed cannabis user. So what does that tell you? I mean, it's the other side of the coin. This stuff can be really effective.
Aren't you glad you didn't need surgery?
Absolutely. I mean, the CBD side of things right now in the cannabis industry is really blowing up and legitimizing cannabis use among athletes and professional sports organizations. So much so that recently WADA, the World Anti-Doping Association, has taken CBD off the list of banned substances.
Right.
So, there's progress being made, millimeter by millimeter. And
Sure.
This was a big step, I think. In Rio this year, during the Summer Olympics, they said they weren't going to be testing, for cannabis and whatnot. So, I think, the IOC has somewhat of a responsibility to promote a healthy lifestyle.
Yeah,
and,
sure, of course.
To tell the truth about, the way the world turns, basically. And
Yeah.
I think they have that on their shoulders now.
I think it's fascinating that they tell you that it's of no value, though. And clearly, there was some problem with the fact that you had taken cannabis and somebody had found this in your system. And then they tell you that
Right.
they need to take
yeah.
and this is all for false morals or something, or false science or whatever it is, or a sense of control that fell through from the people that removed it from you. Thankfully, they gave it back to you, and you are the proud owner, and you did win the race, and you do have the hardware to show for it.
Correct.
Which is great.
And yeah, so I mean, the thing that's interesting to me is that, and I think everyone could agree at the time, and I like to say it's performance enhancing, but it isn't directly performance enhancing.
No.
And I think the move that they made in '98 to make a big deal out of my story wasn't about a level playing field. It was a social issue, and I'm not sure why they wanted to jump on a social issue. Their mandate is to create a level playing field.
Right.
And the other thing that's interesting is I ended up in jail in Japan.
Oh, really?
How many athletes who test positive have Olympic scandals for steroids, which are illegal?
Sure. And dangerous.
They don't go to jail.
No. That's incredible.
Anyway, just saying.
So this is what I love about it, because as I've looked at it over the years and seen your business, which I'd love to talk to you about now, you were only successful in this business, and this is not an insult. This is a fantastic thing. You're obviously a pioneer. Like I said in the intro, you've got it in your blood, because had they not kicked up a fuss, which they should not have done, Ross. You should have not received this notoriety. No offense. You should have not gone to jail, and you should not have had to appear in Jay Leno. You should have just been able to win your medal, and then, like a lot of other folks, we may not have heard from you again. But you carried this cannabis mantle with you. You got internationally famous with it. So did Canada, and now you've parlayed this into a functioning business once again, dispelling the notion that no one using cannabis can contribute to society. So tell us all about Ross's Gold, and tell everybody how all of that works and what you're doing there.
Sure. Well, Ross's Gold is a cannabis company. It's a Canadian cannabis company born here in British Columbia, the home of the world famous BC Bud. And when we first launched 5 years ago, the model was a branding and licensing model. We weren't sure, what the direction of the federal government was. We were living in the Harper era, and cannabis business just wasn't, looking like the brightest move at the time. But I personally wanted to start the company up during Prohibition. I wanted to get known for being part of the movement. I wanted to help out and contribute in a way, and I wasn't sure how. I didn't want to be perceived as an outsider, to the industry and whatnot. And just like in snowboarding, there were a lot of guys that came before me that got it to be allowed on the lifts, and there was a lot of people that kind of set the stage for me to sort of take advantage of the work that had been done on cannabis and help promote the positive story of cannabis, and to lift the stigmas and get rid of the stereotypes. As an Olympic athlete, gold medalist no less, I felt like there would be a certain mission in my life after the Olympics if I was to win. And clearly this was the card, the hand that was dealt to me. And it was obvious, from the very beginning that, I was going to have to start Ross's Gold. It did take a couple of decades almost, though.
You made that decision a long time ago to start the company.
I knew right away, instantly, that this was big. I mean, I was already a big cannabis believer, obviously, before getting to Nagano, and we were just, it was like the Neanderthal times of cannabis back then. It was really illegal and not cool to, I had problems with sponsorships and to
Tell
this
me
day
about it.
traveling. So, right. And so anyways, I felt like, not only to vindicate myself, but to also bring justice to, the cannabis culture and cannabis period. I needed to create a positive story about cannabis and bring it out of the shadows into the light, tell the truth about it. I create a company and a brand, Ross's Gold, to, perpetuate, the cannabis story and get it out there, and to push the limit federally, to push the limits of the law, to open our store early. We've got 25 kinds of flour. We got every kind of shatter and butter. We got all the edibles.
Okay, don't cut out on us.
Infused drinks. We have a coffee bar. This place is balls out. I mean, you walk into the Ross Gold store and people sometimes look for, where's the jewelry? Like, is this a jewelry store, or is this what is this? And, I'm proud to say that, we've got a line of glass in there. We've got a clothing line in there. We've got all
when you
kinds
say
of
glass, you mean like
products.
smoking pipes, etc.?
Yeah, rossgoldglass.com. You can check it out. We have 100 different pieces. Beautiful packaging, leather cases, leather boxes for all the pieces and whatnot.
Nice.
And so we got a franchise model, and we're basically selling franchises right now as we speak across the country, not to be opened before July 1st, and of course depending on which province and municipality you're going to be living in. But
how do you handle the legalities of it? I mean, if technically speaking, Canada doesn't have a plan in place at all, but they don't have a plan that's going to be happening until July 1st. So ostensibly what you're doing right now is illegal, or how do you look at it? It's illegal right now.
It's illegal. We're in a gray zone. BC is different than Ontario. Okay. The culture here is different.
Yeah.
Just to start off with, so we have more of a track record with cannabis here as far as numbers and safety, and the reality of cannabis is more out in the open in British Columbia. So, but we took a risk, and I put my neck out there on the chopping block, and I got the store. My name's all over it.
Well, I hear you. You're a brother in that way. That's why I'm so happy you were able to come on and talk about this. So I want to just sum up what we've got so far. Here's a gentleman who has a given talent, and he's been able to parlay that into excellence and winning a gold medal. And the whole time he's been a cannabis user. And then I'm going to have to hear about how cannabis doesn't, do anything to help you. So then he wins the gold medal, and then the false pompous morality of those that didn't want him to have that gold medal and didn't want a gold medalist who has so been using cannabis, but then they figured to give it to him anyway. And because they made that error in judgment from supposedly clear-thinking minds that don't use cannabis, Ross has been able to basically stick it in their face. It's kind of an in-your-face response, isn't it?
It is. It feels great.
Well, I hear that. So give us again a couple of the products you have and tell us what is so special about them. I don't even understand butter. How does that go?
Well, it's an extract. So we have a critical extraction machine that is very expensive. It's, you know, the oil industry uses similar machines. So we can basically get the essential oils right out of the cannabis.
Does this use heat or pressing or?
Both pressure, heat. You know, some of it has some of the processes use solvents, some are solventless. You know, so we do basically all the different kinds at the highest quality level. So if we're using butane, we actually use a kind of butane called purtane, and you know, we're able to clean it out perfectly. When you smell this stuff, the butter or the shatter, they're almost the same thing. The shatter is actually hard and brittle, and
right.
The terpenes that you can smell when you get it down to that pure form is unbelievable. You wouldn't believe that it's, you know, that you're smelling a product from cannabis. It's very like the citrus, the lemon smells, the orange smells.
Yeah.
I mean, it's unbelievable. And then, so Roscoe, we've got vaporizer pens. I've got a new pen out by Roken called the Cyclone Special Edition, especially for extracts. We've got throwaway Ross Gold pens with pure distillate in there.
Okay, let me ask you about that.
We got everything.
Tell me a little bit about the throwaway pens, because I'm starting to have a bit of a problem with that myself in the amount of waste in general. Is that a concern yet? I mean, you know, we don't want it's like you don't want a big slag heap with a whole bunch of batteries in there leaking into the ground. So is there any kind of consideration on those types of disposables? They're almost the same as the rechargeables.
So yeah, we're coming out with one that you can refill the cartridges so that you can use it multiple times before, you know, you dispose of it.
Fair enough.
We're going to be basically switching over from the throwaway version to one where it's rechargeable, that you can replace the cartridges, because like as you mentioned, you know, it's completely unethical.
Yeah.
to be throwing away batteries and things like that.
Well, it's amazing to me. I think a lot of the stuff that goes on that's I would call unethical is a result of the fact that in so many cases there's a legal oppressive system around it, such as in California, where in the manufacture of a lot of these products in California, they've been finding here and there, and this isn't cool, and I don't support this, where they've been finding like those little you know, cylinders that you use when you go camping for camping fuel, like propane or butane or whatever, and huge amounts of them just rotting and leaking in piles here and there in the wilds, and they're, you know, the wilds of California showing up, and it's a bit of a problem. I don't think it would be there though if everything was legalized enough that you're not punishing people for coming up with a product, and they'd be able to be more responsible if they weren't concerned about telltale signs everywhere.
That's just it. Yeah, 100%. That's just it. And, you know, for the most part, that's why dispensaries haven't been at the level that they should be, because why would they invest money when they're just going to get shut down potentially the next day? So, you know. And
then the government will tell you, see, these people don't know what they're doing. They're making a mess, and they're spinning it around.
No, they do know what they're doing. They're not stupid. They're not going to waste money when, you know. So, like, that's one of the risks that we took, as we actually did build out our store.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, you're right. With unregulation comes all of this stupidness that doesn't have to happen. And, you know, and it goes all the way down the line. It's not just with cannabis. There's lots of things like this.
Yeah. Well, I'm very happy that you came on and you figured out a way to parlay what was originally a bad thing. You've lost your medal. You're a bad boy. And then they gave it back to you. And because of the reason, you've turned it into something that is it's still illegal. My hat is off to you. Well, it's not. I'm going to keep it on. But it's amazing that you've done this and you're doing this and you're standing there telling them that you're doing this and coming on the show. And we're going to put I want to get some links out. I want to understand exactly everybody listening around the world This guy's a world gold medalist from Canada. So tell us again your website, and is there a Twitter handle, and a basic, just an awareness of where we can find you or where we can visit you if we come to beautiful Kelowna.
Absolutely. So first of all, the rossgold.com is our corporate site that links you up to our store, which is rossgoldmj.ca.
And that's spelled ROSSGOLD?
Yeah, GOLD, Rossgold mj.ca is the store. And then I have a Instagram is Ross Rebagliati 98. Basically post all kinds of stuff about growing weed there, and you can see my outdoor crop that I turned out this summer. Interestingly enough, I had the RCMP at my house twice over the summer.
Is that right? Having tea and brownies, or what are you doing?
Yeah, I had 7 big MK Ultra plants that I was growing, and I've got licenses for them. I got licenses for twice as many, but I only had 7. And
why were they
I guess
there?
there was a neighbor complaining, and they came 2 times. And then both times I showed them my license, I showed them the plants, and both times they apologized and left and told me that, we had actually a pretty good conversation the one time about my store and about the industry in general.
Yeah.
And it was a good, honest conversation, I have to say.
That's good. I know there's a lot of cops out there that understand what's going on. It's a lot of the police chiefs, and it's very uncomfortable to me that when they make the move towards legalization, the first body of people they're going to talk to are the police officers, and they're whining and complaining about how much more money it's going to cost to go legal. Whereas it shouldn't really cost more to go legal.
That's just a joke.
It is.
They're just asking for money because they think there's an opportunity for them to get money, but they don't need any more money.
No.
They need less money.
That's it. They need less money to police. But while they may need, if they're going to stay stuck in this ridiculous mental construct, while they may need more money to police, they don't seem to consider the facts of the overall health benefits that so many people are going to experience on the other side of the ledger. You're going to have plummeting healthcare costs, overall at the end of the day with this stuff.
Huge revenues from taxing
and they don't put that into the mix.
Yeah. I know.
John Tory, mayor of Toronto, says, this isn't about making money. Yeah, okay. John Tory's never been about making money. Okay. So this is fantastic. I'm so glad you were able to come on, and I hope you come on again soon, because as we head into hopefully some altered legislation, so we don't have to then undo the mess that these people have put together, and we're going to want to hear how successful your launch is. Maybe I'm going to be somewhere on July 1st to celebrate somehow the new
may as well come to Kelowna
awareness, and I may as well come to Kelowna to do it more than just as much as anywhere else. Ross, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show. And
my pleasure.
Putting
Thank
up
you for having me.
with the tardy start, but I figured if I could get away with being a little bit more late than being a little bit late, it would be with a cannabis-consuming snowboarder.
You bet. You bet it is. I'm going to go consume some cannabis right now.
Fantastic. I hope you're doing it illegally and that you enjoy it and derive great benefit from it.
I will.
Thanks, Ross. We'll be in touch. Thanks very much for coming on.
You bet. It was my pleasure.
Talk mine
soon,
too.
bro.
Thanks very much. Ross Rebagliati, folks, not contributing to society, not contributing to the good, the greater good. Obviously an irresponsible individual because he's addled his mind with this particular substance. And of course, I'm being facetious all the way through because why wouldn't I be? Ross is building an empire on a bed of lies, and anybody that wants to start a new business, maybe take another look at what they're doing in their life, they don't like their crummy job. This is a burgeoning industry at its very beginnings. Unfortunately, should have been rocking and rolling since the 30s. But I'm a whistling in the dark here. I don't seem to have any politicians helping me out with this particular point of view. Not in this country anyway, but of course now I'm going to give up the floor to our friend Paul Flynn, who is a politician, and you've heard this before and you're going to hear it again like a song on the radio.
I think we have to say To those who put up with the barbaric stupidity and cruelty of government policy to act in a way of civil disobedience. We know most of the countries in the world allow this most ancient of medicines, been used for 5,000 years in every continent in the world. It's used for medicinal purposes. Well, I would call on people, and I know we're not supposed to do this as men, but to break the law.
That's right.
To come here and use cannabis.
That's what he's saying. And when he says here, he means the UK Parliament. Okay, so that's what he's talking about. We're going to slide on out of here on episode 17 in the can, pretty much. So my closing thoughts. I'm going to go all Jerry Springer on you today. While we fight this particular battle, I don't like to think of it as a battle. I like to think of it more as a chess game, which is a battle, but it's a little more civilized than that. I don't want any bloodshed. I don't want any hassle. And when I say that, I'm talking to the cops and the government about putting me in jail or Ross in jail or anybody else in jail for using a plant. When you booze hounds rolling around in your cruisers trying to get your shift behind you so you can go to the bar where mostly a lot of other cops are and knock back another few and maybe drive home with one or two above the legal limit, but that's okay because you know the other guy's in the same blue uniform. As we slide into this particular legalization, I think one of the addendums we're going to have to enforce in the new legislation is that any police officer who's sworn an oath to serve and protect in an era of legal cannabis is going to have to do a breathalyzer and drug test himself every time he gets into the cruiser for a shift. Let's bring the oppressive rules equally down upon everybody to make it fair, okay? So if you're a cop, we're going to need a blood test once in a while. We're going to need to know if you've got too much alcohol or cannabis in your system to perform your function that we're all paying for, which is, of course, to repress the rest of us. Now, I know they're just the soldiers, and I know there's a lot of good ones. Hell, some of my best friends are cops. But there's some other people involved here. Take this nugget with you and research it. The Paradise Papers just came out this week. This is decades-long research showing how the people at the tippy top of the weaselly 1% have secreted their bucks elsewhere, while folks like Justin Trudeau and Tax Minister Morneau want to tell us how repressive they're going to get with small business in this country. They're just leaning towards corporatization of everything, and it's disgusting. Let's remember, corpos means dead, and those are the folks driving the economy, both physically and mentally, all chasing a buck. This is what has fostered the opioid crisis and the criminality mindset of a bunch of pigs who knew they'd make millions of dollars on the backs of dead people. Still doing it. It's easy to fix the opioid crisis. You find out who's bringing it in. You stop them from doing that. And you bust them and put them in jail, and you don't have any more opioids on the market. Why is that so fucking hard to understand? But further than that, I also want to mention something that I realized the other day. This new system of laws that Canada is putting into consideration and implementation of control sits atop a series of lies that are so dark, such as how it's not healthy, and it isn't if you use it wrong. You know, just like a chainsaw. If you don't know how to use a chainsaw, you shouldn't be. Check the instruction manual, okay? Figure it out, understand how it works, because what you're doing here is you're trying to prevent something that cannot be prevented, folks. This is a substance that we are going to be able to use forever. We're taking it back. And while you're shitting on it, Justin, let's remember that you're a heavy-duty financier that is now being investigated for you, who have won the election of 2015, perhaps under false pretenses. Maybe you broke a couple of rules to get there. That's the investigation right now. That's the buzz. Justin Trudeau's legitimate election is maybe not so legitimate, and it's been funded into existence by a gentleman whose last name is Bronfman. His first name is Stephen. And when Stephen Bronfman was born, he was already rich because his family are the oligarchs running the Seagram's liquor establishment that has made millions of dollars and under the Seagram's booze brand. And isn't it ironic that a bunch of booze meisters have now created a system where they're going to tell everybody using cannabis that they're criminal and that they're bad people and that you shouldn't be doing that stuff? It's all connected, folks, all intertwined. We'll be back, not next week, but the week after that. Thanks for listening.
Hello, Alan. I've been waiting.
Cannabis Broadcasting Group here at cbgtv.com. Announcing CBGTV's Bud Break book. Get your copy now. Detailed strain reviews. Every purchase supports the ongoing efforts of CBGTV. Available from Amazon and at cbgtv.com or scan the QR code.